Welcome to HydroLuna, a new series of real-world videos discussing the skills and knowledge that will be required for humans to bring life to the moon. Earth's moon specifically, Luna. Now, the moon has not been very cooperative for astrophotography for the past 2 nights in my area due to weather fronts and clouds and such, but I have plenty of pictures. I've long admired our Earth's orbitally only moon orbital body that we know of, and it is one of the most exciting things to me to finally bring this series to life. And one of the first topics I wanted to go over is to kind of a general topic of how optics are when we're studying the moon and the limitations, and then go into something that is absolutely incredible: lava tubes. Now, you're probably, don't click away. This is not one of those kind of 3 a.m. videos on YouTube. It genuinely is a thing. And NASA and ESA and partners around the world are taking it very, very seriously. The concept of using underground areas that already exist on the moon for use by future exploration, both crewed and uncrewed type of operations. So the limitations on optics, one of the interesting things is my picture as well, that is digital photography that is enhanced. So when you take a DSLR style camera and you zoom it in past its optical capabilities, and no matter how much glass you throw at it, you will hit that limit. And granted, there are specialized telescopes, but we're going to go into that in another video. But when you go into photography, which is how I got my start, and I truly enjoy, and I feel it's very accessible for anyone, you end up in the world of digital. And when we're talking about things, even the size of lava tubes that can be over 1,500 feet wide, even in some of the studies that we found, the openings that they found, they're still really, really, really small. Because what you need to understand is, while Luna is only a significant distance away from Earth, and it's not that far away when you look at it on a solar system map, the moon itself, when you get there, is rather large. So you wouldn't be able to just drive from one side of the United States, like California, all the way to, let's say, Tennessee, and just say, oh, that's real close together. It's something that you need to kind of be close together, especially because there's significant difficulties on the moon unless you had improved surfaces added to it, such as roadways and such, and we have none of that technology yet. So there have been all sorts of exciting things. Astronauts hopped across the moon trying to get places. They found it was more efficient. Wheels had a hard time getting through certain areas because it's covered in craters and, giant holes in the ground for various reasons, such as lava tube openings. We'll get to. But the point is that the moon is really, really big. So you want to land where you're going to deal with. One of the most fascinating things of all of this is that we have studied the moon not that great. We have orbiters that have zoomed in as best they can with all sorts of different sensors, but a lot of times the sensors are rather outdated by the time they actually get up there. There have been specialized systems that are extremely sophisticated, like this public domain information from NASA, showing their studies by the Lunar Reconnaissance rover that flew around and did scans as well, using multispectral scanning and trying to produce images, and also scanned 3D renders of what we can imagine these spaces to be. And what is interesting about all of this is that it finally gives us another angle to look at. So one of the things that the moon is notorious for is trying to get any type of contrast from imagery on the moon. I often take pictures, and I often describe them as fingerprints. Every single night they change, completely change. And it's because different craters are kind of put across a shadow, especially when you're not talking about full moons. And when you have those crescent moons and such that are really good for this type of stuff, you get a lot of good imagery. But still, at the end of the day, you only have images from one direction. But missions like the Lunar Reconnaissance rover and future missions that they're trying to put together have very fascinating scans of some of the more detail-oriented locations, like the deeper parts of craters, like these holes in the ground that we believe are lava tubes. Evidence of a prehistoric, I guess you could say, volcanic eruptions that happened well before life and settled. And there is no longer active lava that we know of on the moon, and the likelihood is basically doesn't exist that there is any. But these remain. So over time, the lava tubes, the interior of them has slowly disintegrated over eons, and then there's empty spaces. And these are what is exciting when these scans are done, these flyovers are done by various countries, and then we find these crazy images. Much like cave-ins on modern day Earth, there are parts of the lava tubes that have basically crumpled in and created what's now nicknamed skylights by some. And these skylights allow us to tell there's something there. We don't quite know which direction it's going or where it is unless we have other clues, such as other holes in a line, but we know they're there. And these are openings to be able to send uncrewed craft into those spaces and be able to determine if it's safe in the future to explore and if it's worth exploring. You see all these scans and pictures from different angles and such from Earth and from these orbiting craft that are up on around orbiting Luna or in Earth's low Earth orbit, high Earth orbit, all these exciting ways we could do this. They are not going to be able to tell us much about what the composition of what is under the ground there. Sending something in to see what is there will be the best way to tell if there's ice in that area or if there's metals and other interesting type things. If you have to remember that this is kind of like a cheat code. It's like exploring an old mine before they knew what bauxite was, and you'd be able to turn it into aluminum, or being able to find a new way to mechanically move gold out of a mine from an old mine. It's almost like that in a weird way. We'll have to relearn how to do things, but we have more technology and that we can develop before we send it in if we just know what we're dealing with before we get there. So there's a lot of really interesting folks out there talking about some very crazy stuff like ilmenite. And ilmenite is a material that is formed, titanium iron oxide, that is formed during lava flows. And this stuff is apparently, there's evidence that it's on the moon. And what is fascinating about such things is if that is confirmed and there's large amounts of it in different places on the moon, then we will be able to do a lot more with that information because this is already a material we have on Earth and we know how to process it into different things. It's very expensive to get things out of the gravity well that is Earth. The moon is at the top of our gravity well, effective gravity well anyway. And basically, if we can build things made out of metal on the moon, we can build structures, we can build substance, we can build habitation, and then furthermore, we can build craft to go explore Mars and other places. The moon, even if you don't care about the moon itself, being able to have a safe habitation on the moon is something that's extremely exciting to many people. And don't take my word for it. What we have seen time and time again is different space programs and also private agencies, private organizations, looking into what they can do to take advantage of the resources that are on the moon. And these lava tubes allow us to have a leg up on a lot of different safety factors. So while I don't expect you to remember this is not a test, what you just saw was one of the pits on Mare Tranquillus, and it is a skylight of a lava tube. And this is another, what I like about this shot is another angled shot. Both are public domain by NASA. Thank you to them. In Marius Hills. So this is nicknamed the Hirayama Skylight Pit. And this one in particular I like because it shows that there is a deeper areas to the sides of the shot, and the contrast is excellently done. So they chose that, I believe they chose a good timing, or they simply took multiple pictures over the span of multiple orbits in order to get these shots. One of the interesting things about the moon on the surface is, like I mentioned, the contrast is extremely hard to get, especially close up. So our detail level on a lot of things is kind of poor. And it's not just about the age of the equipment. I kind of took a shot at it at the beginning, and I apologize for that. It is, but also it has to be made to survive cosmic radiation and risk of micrometeorites, and needs to be redundant in a lot of ways for the primary sensor systems. And all of those things add complexity, and they also add simplicity is important. It matters more if the system needs to be heated up, and how much energy is that going to consume? How much energy is that camera going to utilize? There's only so much energy, especially on a mission that might only use solar panels and not have an RTG style battery on board, like the Apollo missions had the luxury of. They had nuclear batteries in the base of every single one of those LEM landers, and the LEM, the Lunar Expedition Module, was able to go down and leave it there. They left the nuclear material, the battery, on the surface of the moon, and then they took off in the top part. That was one of the big risks with Apollo 13. It was not just the astronauts, which thank goodness they got home, but the astronauts were still on duty, so to speak, even while they were taking those evasive maneuvers and on all the steps they had to do to survive and improvise. They also had a safe plan, working with their ground crew, to safely get that trajectory out of there for that nuclear material, so it would be safely disposed of. Once again, it shows the incredible depths that the manned spaceflight goes through to try to do these things the right way. And once, to the point, a lot of missions would never get sent up into space because of the sheer cost if they had to rely on such battery systems. And I know I'm going on a tangent here, and I promise it's getting to somewhere. I promise. When something is orbiting the moon, or it's sitting up in orbit above Earth, it can get solar power. Part of the mission profile can be that it always has access to the sun, or enough access to the sun where it can be charged up, no problems, etc. When we send something under the ground, what could possibly be dozens of miles of excursion routes, think on the level of Mars missions, Mars rover missions, could be the potential for a system. And it may never get out of there. It may just constantly be exploring and monitoring over time. Is there shifts happening that we aren't accounting for? Like, we find these amazing places before we send more equipment and then eventually people. Is there something happening there that's dangerous for us to be in there? If you have a 24/7 nuclear powered little rover sitting there just hanging out, staying warm enough to stay alive, and occasionally turning on, firing off information back to Earth, and then you've got something there, right? So you can really study these before we ever have to risk a human being. And back to the safety factors. If we can safely use these for human operations, for crewed operations, what will happen is that we will have a home that is safe from the micrometeorites, that is safe from cosmic radiation, like such as the solar storms that can come off of the Earth, come off of our sun. And these CEMs, these coronal mass ejections, are no joke, because if they come off of our sun without the atmosphere protecting it of Earth, the ionosphere of Earth protecting you, on the moon, it can be a very serious situation, far more serious than just, oh, there might be a small pretty lights in the sky, and there might be some specific things that might have impacts for short periods of time, as our Space Weather Center, or SW. In America, National Weather Service has the SWC, the Space Weather Center, that puts out directives about that. So if you want to check that out, reach out to me in the comments. I'll give you a link to their public-facing site. That's really cool. Got some great information there. But importantly, none of us have extensive knowledge of what the impacts are to the moon yet. We kind of can guess, and even experts can. And I'm no expert at any of this, by the way. I'm a hobbyist. The key here is that if we are going to use it as a home, we are going to enjoy all these safety effects. We have to study these places heavily. And also we have to look at new types of construction capabilities. It's one thing to build in a lava tube on Earth, but these much larger lava tubes that can grow exponentially in size compared to Earth, due the leading theory is due to the low the 1/6 gravity of the moon, give or take. I know it's not exact. Please don't beat me up in the comments over this. Obviously this is a summary video. But because the moon is such smaller gravity than the Earth, just keeping it simple, what we have here is a situation where we may need to invent new ways to reinforce these structures, utilizing materials that are found on the ground, manufactured on the ground or under the surface, and then they reinforce slowly but surely different parts. And the gold standard would be if we can somehow seal off these openings, then create bulkheads in the middle of these structures, seal off the walls appropriately in the ceilings, and then pump them full with at least low amounts of oxygen. So if we could at least get a low pressure of oxygen in these, then all of a sudden the efficiency would skyrocket. You know, they are extremely cold under there, but they're assumed to be more consistent temperatures than the surface of the moon. Remember, you don't have the sun cooking everything, you know, for 2 weeks. So what happens is they have their own limitations too. So back to a lot of factors that a lot of people have brought up is that the psychological aspect of living in a cave on another foreign body for extended periods of time would certainly mess with your psyche, especially even without the extremely long daytimes and night times of the moon. You would need to have like an above surface representation. There would be the equivalent of like an elevator system, ladders and such, that would take people back and forth up onto the surface. And that's kind of my point here, is that I think a lot of folks, including some very knowledgeable folks, seem to hyper niche into it's this or that. And I think the future of even early moon operations would be building a small, uncrewed, and then later on crewed location. So it's like a home base, so to speak, building out a site that happens to be near a very promising set of tube entries, at least 2 ideally, and that have been scouted out by these missions beforehand that are not crewed, and then being able to explore them and slowly introduce them. And don't take my word for it again. This is a major company, Komatsu. I'm just using a short clip here showing that they just released a week ago some of their construction operations that they intend to eventually get on the moon. And I think it's kind of funny that, you know, just less than just over a year ago, a big construction firm pointing out that they could have these devices that would be running around autonomously and working together and coordinated from ground crews and such, or likely in the future crewed from the moon at a base, and then these things are out there risking the machine, not the person, you know, so they have low latency and they're able to coordinate and then fix the units. But at first they would be uncrewed completely, getting their orders from mission control. It brings up an interesting topic. Where does all this go together? So again, I think that it's not an either or. I think these systems make a lot of sense. I don't think that there's going to be a situation where it's like, okay, we've made the decision to explore these tubes for resources, for mining operations and extraction, and for like a safety area, and we're not going to do anything on the surface. That's just silliness. I don't think that's going to be even a possibility. I think at the very least there's going to be a ton of attempts to create types of food proteins and such, like algae operations, that will benefit from being up on the surface, or at least having some sort of access. Another good point here is that some of the deeper craters that are believed on the south pole of the moon that may or may not have ice, and it seems like there's evidence to prove they do, if they end up having enough ice to really be warranted, these amazing operations, especially for our initial operations on the moon, then they will have a lot of problems with sunlight as well. So a lot of the technology, such as mirrors bouncing off the light and being able to create things, will be tested on them too, don't forget. And then the other interesting little side note here is that if we do end up having these deeper operations on these craters, you will have some of the benefits of being underground. You will have basically this protective barrier all around your sides, like a castle, like castle walls of old, you know. So if extreme angle micrometeorites come in, or maybe cosmic rays or something like that from a CME, you know, studies would have to be worked on. But if the walls are taller than your structures, and you're holding tanks of your water and other things like that, and fuels, it would probably help with the radiation factor, especially if you did any attempt to cover the crater with anything at all. And I'm not saying even pressurize the damn thing. I'm just saying a protective grid of some sort would certainly be on the table. And once again, all that technology could then be deployed towards lava tube operations, where you start taking over these things, as at the very least mining sites. I mean, they are some of the best things. And I would be remiss if I did not bring up one of the other fascinating topics of these lava tubes for this initial video anyway. They are an easy way for us to explore the depths of the moon. And even if you don't want to mine them, or you don't have the means to mine them for who knows how long to come, you can get clues to the not just the moon's origins, but also Earth's origins. And did it really come from Earth? So that's really cool and incredible that we are in that type of era now, where being able to explore under the surface of the moon is not only possible, it's likely. And I think it's really cool to see these discussions happening. I hope that this video in some way brings a little bit of a spark to your knowledge of Luna, and gives you some ideas of why it's so important for the future of everybody, the human race. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you to my long-term subscribers for putting up with me. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do make a lot of Star Citizen videos as well. I'm not giving up on those. I do. This is another hobby of mine, is astrophotography, and I do enjoy discussing these. And once again, this is the HydroLuna series of videos discussing knowledge and skills that will help bring life to the moon. And once again, for whatever reason you find that interesting, thank you for being here. Take care.
Oh, Father, tell me, do we get what we deserve? Oh, we get what we deserve. And where down we go, oh, 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 where down we go, oh, 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 so where down we go, oh, 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 way down we go. Oh, you let your feet run wild. Time has come as we all go down. Yeah, but for the fall, ooh, my heart, do you dare to look them right in the eyes? Yeah. Oh, 'cause they will run you down, down to the dark. Yeah, someday we'll run you down, down till you fall. We